Well, hello everyone, I'm Paul Eccard, and thank you for watching. And welcome to Waterford United with Pete Davis, candidate for Waterford First Selectman, and Glenn Patterson, candidate for the Waterford Board of Selectmen. You know, today we thought we would talk a little bit about capital improvement planning and budgeting. Now, I know that sounds boring on the surface, but frankly, that's one of the most important jobs in the office of the First Selectman because it has the greatest impact on all of our daily lives in the end results and has a great impact on all of our annual budgets and the tax and how our taxes have to be assessed in order to meet the needs of the community. So it's a critical responsibility. And in local government, it's probably the most important responsibility that government can deliver to the voters. And Waterford in particular in its charter places great responsibility for this in the office of the First Selectman. So we're here talking to the right people about how to improve this and how to go forward. So Pete, I thought I would start with you and ask you a little bit about, well, I know it, but I think everyone should hear how thorough it is. A little bit about your view on the importance of careful capital improvement planning and budgeting.
Sure, Paul. The first thing I want to do, though, is I want to make, this is, I guess, the public service portion of the program today, is I want to announce to everybody, Paul has agreed to take on the duties of managing our campaign, which we're absolutely thrilled about. And it actually comes full circle for Paul and I, because I managed a couple of Paul's campaigns years ago now, it seems. And I just want to express my gratitude for you taking on those responsibilities, because it's not an easy job, especially with Glenn and I.
It's actually because of our friendship and because of my belief in both of you and how much I think both of you can do for the town of Waterford. It's truly, and this is going to sound phony, but I mean it. It's an honor to do it for a friend and for somebody I respect so much.
We're looking forward to it. So let's dive into today's topic. Capital planning. Just a little bit of background. In my professional life with the city of Norwich over the past roughly 15 or 17 years, I've been involved in doing the capital planning program for the city of Norwich through the planning office. And you're right, Paul, it is a very important part of the budget process, and it can get a little boring, but it's significant in the sense that probably the largest portion of the budget every year is generally involved with capital planning. And when we're talking about capital planning, as you said, we're talking about infrastructure issues, buildings, water and sewer. It was interesting, somebody made the comment to Glenn and I some months ago when we were having breakfast, when we started to talk about the concerns we had about the lack or apparent lack of capital planning and programming in town, that, well, you know, people don't necessarily care about buildings. You know. I guess I would agree to that to a point, but you know, the issue becomes when you have issues that cause infrastructure to fail. For example, on Fog Plain Road, they had a fairly significant lapse in water service. As I understand it, they've kind of patched that up. They need to do a little more work over there. The problem's more extensive than what they originally thought it was. So there's people in the
road reconstruction still is not done.
Yeah,
I mean on that project.
Yeah, that's a topic for another day.
Right.
But it is part of this topic.
Right.
But the point of that being is that even through the budget process this year, I never really heard any significant discussion about road reconstruction or infrastructure issues. There are items in the budget that address some of those, but in our opinion, basically what it is it's kind of you're addressing issues. It's a reactive approach instead of a proactive approach in doing the planning and programming of money. So that's why, and bottom line what it is it impacts, if you don't do that planning and programming, it impacts your taxes, obviously. If you don't take care of things in a timely manner, plan them out properly, you're going to have spikes in your taxes to pay for those as they come along. Glenn's going to give you, give the viewers a better, some examples of what we're talking about. And I think at this point, I'll kick it to Glenn, and then we'll...
Before you do that, some of the things you said were just so key. I just want to kind of re-emphasize. I think it's so important what you were saying. We all know that, if the department heads are doing their jobs, we're basically going to be picking up the garbage, and we're going to be hopefully opening the schools, and the teachers are going to show up for work, and all those things should happen. And we pay our taxes, and we expect them to. But it's very, very distressing when there's a $10, $20, $30, $50 million project that comes on you as a surprise. Because just like when you're running your own home, you can't do it that way. And we can't run a town that way. That's why I'm so happy, Pete, that you've, from your professional experience and from your life experience, you know the key of what you just said. So glad I didn't mean to interrupt, but
no problem.
Go on to your examples.
Yeah, so I took an approach to this, trying to come up with a proper analogy, maybe, that folks could identify with as far as the need for capital planning. And there are two, I think, underlying reasons to go with this analogy. One is, first, one of the themes of our campaign is we want people to understand why this matters to them. So that's one of the underlying things here. The other thing is the concept of the town government acting for the common good. People, like you said, Paul, people pay their taxes and they have expectations. And their expectation is those tax dollars that they spend are going to be spent for the common good. So when we commit to capital projects in town, as like Pete alluded to, buildings and water lines and sewers, they're owned by the taxpayers. It's their property. And there's an expectation that the town government's going to take care of that property for them. So the analogy I'm going to come up with is similar. It's similar to a condominium association, where people live in the same complex. They have a board of directors. They have somebody that kind of runs the show on their behalf, similar to a town government, and they typically hire a property manager to take care of that property. So the condo fees are collected, and the expectation is that the common good will be taken care of, while, as you said, the people deal with their own homes within that condominium complex. So, again, condo associations collect these fees, they hire a property management company, and they take care of the property, and they provide services, again, just like a town government. The town, the condo property manager takes care of getting the garbage collected, et cetera, et cetera. So, towns are similar to these property managers. For all intents and purposes, the taxpayers are hiring the town to take care of that for them. So it's taxpayer-owned property, and the taxpayers are expecting the town to take care of it. So when a property manager falls down on the job at a condo complex, and maintenance or upgrade type of items are deferred or delayed, it's reflected in the condition of the property, making the property less attractive to a buyer, and as a result, the common good suffers. Everybody suffers as a result of that. Everybody's property is worth less. And one of the outfalls of that as well is that when the work is ultimately performed, it's at an added cost to those property owners. So with a municipality, the same principles apply. If the town has subpar infrastructure, from a tax standpoint, it's less attractive to bond lenders. It's less attractive to potential taxpayers, developers coming into town. So the common good suffers. People pay more to borrow money if you're going to bond a major project. And you have a diminished capacity to increase the tax base to help the property owners with the tax burden. And delaying projects or putting them off, similar to the condo folks, it costs more money if you wait, in almost every case. So,
Glenn, that's a very useful comparison to what we need to look at here. I think that helps a lot because, and that word manager, that's why the town's charter places so much responsibility in the office of the first selectman for this, because there's a lot of good people doing a lot of good work all through the town government. But the taxpayers have a reasonable expectation that somebody is truly managing the overall picture, looking at the whole field and seeing what is going to need attention today, what's going to need attention tomorrow, and what's potentially going to need serious attention within a reasonable span of time. So you can't expect somebody who has daily responsibilities for, as you used your example, for picking up trash or for taking care of everyday needs, is going to be thinking all the time about what it's going to look like 10 or 20 years from now. Somebody better. And that's why our charter placed that responsibility in our first selectman. So, with that, everything that we do in government has a tax effect, or most everything does. And so we always have to be mindful of that. So the needs are usually serious. They're usually important to one level or another. So Pete, maybe you could help a little bit on how you think we best establish priorities for our capital improvement planning and budgeting.
Paul. You hate to boil everything down to that common denominator of taxes, but the fact of the matter is that most people within this community, or any community, you pick up the newspaper any day, especially this time of year, people are going through the municipal budget process, and people are concerned about taxes, cost of living increases, retired people on fixed incomes.
Yeah, the first selectman has to be mindful of that, absolutely.
Right. So it's a huge responsibility, and in the town of Waterford, the majority of that responsibility is obviously placed in the hands of the first selectman. So to your point, Paul, the proper way to approach this, and the town seems to at times attempt to do it, but it seems like they don't really follow through with the process. Again, department heads will submit requests for capital projects. It goes through the Board of Selectmen first. And the Board of Selectmen has a lot of authority to say yes or no. That project is a go, this project is not a go, this project is going to be deferred. So people shouldn't confuse the list of potential capital projects with the capital plan. And I think there's a lot of confusion about that. When the capital plan is put together, there's going to be a laundry list based on department of any number of projects. It's going to amount to millions of dollars, in some cases hundreds of millions of dollars over a period of time. That list is just that. It's basically, here's an inventory, here's a list of potential projects. To take it a step further, after the Board of Selectmen reviews that list, basically they say, okay, this project will be funded, this project won't be funded. What's missing from the process, in my mind, and again, Glenn and I have been very careful about digging into the record.
I know you have. You look closely at this.
Because that's really where you should be looking. There's obviously personal opinion and personal opinion on a lot of this, but the fact of the matter is you need to go back to the record and take a look. Where I see the town falling short, and I think we need to make improvement, and I think we can make improvement, is that there needs to be a larger group of people at the table to do this capital planning process. You need to bring in the Board of Finance members, not all of them, but representatives from the RTM. You need to have department heads sitting at the table. And what seems to be missing over some period of time now is an effort to prioritize this inventory list, if you will. Now, there are other things you have to take a look at. When you go through that list and you have this group discussion and you determine, well, okay, these projects are going to rise to the top. It's not to say that a lot of the projects on the list aren't worthy projects, but of course you always have to keep the taxpayer's ability to pay the bill in the back of your mind, because the fact of the matter is when you go to bonding and you're doing capital projects, it's essentially a credit card for all intents and purposes. So you're obligating the community to pay that credit card off, including interest.
That's right.
So it's important, in my mind, so everybody's on the same page and the public is aware of what projects you're prioritizing, because they have an expectation. Let's talk about roads, for example. Obviously, the roads have been taking a beating for a number of years now. This isn't something that just happened over this past winter.
That's right.
I think if you drive around town and you go through the neighborhoods, you realize that some of these roads have been in pretty poor shape for a number of years, to the point, in some instances where the roads are actually deteriorating. They're actually falling apart. It's
Right,
just
the-
not an
the
issue.
actual
of-
fabric of the road is
Right,
down through to the subsurface.
Yeah,
That's
it's
right.
actually turning to gravel
That's
almost.
right.
So I think the public has a right that when you go through the capital planning process and they see their sidewalks and their roads deteriorating and falling apart, and for a period of years nothing's done, they have a right to know, well, okay, where does my road fall on the list? Again, the process now seems to be a reactionary one. They have a piece of software in Public Works and they keep an inventory of the roads and the condition of the roads, and they update that periodically. They're in the process of doing that again, as I understand it. But having an inventory and keeping track of how bad the roads are deteriorating and which ones are in the worst shape, that's certainly one part of it. But again, the next step that I'm not seeing is that, okay, we're going to create an actual road program. We had one years ago.
We sure
We've kind of
did.
deviated from that, unfortunately. But
Road and sidewalk
Yep,
program.
we need to get back to that. And again, that allows the public to take a look at that actual plan, so they can pick the plan up and say, okay, my road is in bad shape, but there are other parts of town that are in worse shape. So those roads obviously take priority. My road is in the schedule 2 years from now, 3 years from now, 5 years from now, whatever. So at least they have some knowledge and expectation of, okay, my roads and sidewalks are going to be fixed, or my infrastructure issues are going to be addressed within a certain period of time. That type of planning is not happening. What's been going on is that it's basically a reactive situation. The roads that are in the capital plan this year, Douglas Lane is a good example. The money for Douglas Lane was in the program, road program 10 years ago.
That's right. In fact, that was in the road program when I was first selectman, and that is now more than 10 years ago.
So they did the first half 5 years ago. From what I understand, they're just going to do the second half.
Yeah.
And the consequence of that 5-year period of time is that now it's a total reconstruction.
Right.
It's not a repair, it's not a refurbishing,
Not
it's a total,
resurfacing,
to the
right.
tune of, I think, 1.2 million. And generally,
Significant dollars.
yeah, taking, grinding the top off and repaving.
Right.
Generally, that's a cost $275,000 to $300,000 a mile, are the numbers I get from our city
Yeah,
engineers.
that sounds about right. Yeah.
So, it's not even half a mile of road, the other half of Douglas Lane. So again, $1.2 million to do less than half a mile of road. If they had done it 5 years ago, probably would have cost you less, and maybe it wouldn't have been a total reconstruction. So again, just an example.
And the people wouldn't have been using a road that was a washboard as well. Your point is your example is so well taken. I recall when I was first selectman, when we were following the road reconstruction plan, to the extent the budget would allow, we certainly had it prioritized, and we followed that plan as best we could. And it wasn't haphazard. I remember having many conversations with residents and taxpayers about, the condition of where they lived, the roadway where they lived, and I was able to show them where we had it in the plan, and they believed me because we were following it.
Sure.
If you're not following it, then, how do people know if that's what the town's going to do? And that's a real key point. And one other point you made I wanted to pick up on, and it made me think of this. Great experience for me. Years ago, I worked in the Waterford Recreation Department, and wonderful people in all the what they call co-sponsored programs, the little leagues, Babe Ruth, preteen, basketball, youth football, soccer, all those groups come in, and they all had great plans, well thought out plans for what they wanted to do to improve their conditions for the children they were serving. And we would have to bring that list forward. Some of them we tried to winnow out because we knew we couldn't do it. Either we couldn't put lights in a certain neighborhood or whatever they might have in mind. But we had to bring that forward to the Board of Selectmen at that time, and the Recreation Department did. But we knew full well that no one in their right mind was going to fund 10 or 12 or $15 million worth of lighting in 1 year. But nonetheless, that's why the job of the Office of First Selectman, and the First Selectman in particular, is so key here. This is not a haphazard matter. This is a very thorough, you have to apply a lot of brain power to try to do it the right way for the greatest number of people.
Another quick example, and I was away on vacation visiting my new grandchild a week or so ago. So Glenn went to the meeting, but there was a meeting a week or so ago on the Public Works building project, which has been going on 2003,
Well,
2004.
you know, when I was first elected in 1999, there was issues with that because it was a Superfund site, and there were
Correct.
issues with the whole with that and with the maintenance facility that was used by the water and sewer department. But the point I'm getting at is plans began then. We're talking 1999
Yeah.
to address some of these issues that first of all, legally need to be addressed, but also practically.
And again, going back to the record, the project has been deferred. Now, there are probably legitimate reasons for that being deferred because we were dealing with the school
the
projects.
education
And
projects
the
came
Public
forward.
Works facility was a $10+ million project.
task,
Right.
yeah.
But an example of how deferring and not doing planning and programming causes an impact down the road is that obviously we've known about this project for 10 years. There
Yes.
hasn't been any money programmed to put towards that 10
years.
million.
Right,
Yeah, roughly 10 years.
right.
The fact of the matter is, the meeting that Glenn went to, the comment was made that, well, we need the architect or the folks to come back in because we're not really sure what this plan is. It's been delayed so long. It cost the town $80,000 to have the architect come back in,
Give them a new plan.
dust the plan
Dust
off.
the plans off with the term used.
So we could figure out what this project is after 10 years, because nobody's really sure. And the building committee had made requests over that 10-year period in their defense to have this funded and placed in the capital plan and get the thing rolling. And it was deferred. So again, $80,000 just to have the architects come back in to explain to everybody, okay, this is what your project is after 10 years of being deferred.
And I know, Pete, by the way, that plan, because I remember the original plan, there's some operational benefits to that plan.
There certainly is.
So there's some annual budget benefits to doing this the right way. It's just like anything else, like Glenn's example showed. But if that had only been done at a more reasonable time frame, those cost savings that we could achieve year by year, year in, year out, in order to maintain the roads, pick up the garbage, and take care of the recycling and all those issues, as well as making it a safe workplace for the people who are asking to do this,
Absolutely.
we would have addressed, and we haven't. And so we're truly spending not only good money after bad on redoing or dusting off plans, but we're not doing what we could do to do it more efficiently and effectively. It's just, it shows you where it's how bad it is when you don't do the necessary capital improvements.
I had a comment, Paul, just to go back to one thing. You talk about the importance of planning and the importance of having a plan. One of the aspects of a plan, it's a living and breathing thing. You need to be, I guess the word maybe is vigilant.
Yeah. Sure.
You need to be looking at that plan constantly because priorities may change.
And you have to be agile.
When some road, to use the road example, when
Yeah.
a particular road that's down the list may deteriorate quicker, and that road may need to move to the top of the list, and people understand that. If you lay that out there and you say, we had a plan, we had an emergent issue come up that now the plan needs to change, people understand that.
I couldn't agree more. That's like Pete's example.
Yeah.
You don't just say, oh, I got that done. You can't just dust off a plan. You've got to try to address it as a living, you said, breathing thing, because it's affected by events.
The topics of the roads, people normally, I guess I wouldn't normally think of it within this context, but the issue and the condition of the roads is also a public safety issue, and it's also
Sure
a
is.
cost issue. How many people avoid Dayton Road over the years because they're afraid they're going to have damage to the front end of their car or something? So, and if somebody does have damage, that's a cost to them to repair because of a poorly or a non-maintained road. The other issue is public safety. When you have roads in that condition, your response times for emergency vehicles, if they've got to slow down because your road's falling apart, and we all know that minutes make a difference in emergency response times. And certainly, I can guarantee on Douglas Lane or Dayton Road that emergency vehicles that have used that road, they're either bypassing it or else they're traveling at considerably lower speeds because of the condition of those roads.
Well, that's a great example of the real-life impacts of what these things are. You know what? The taxpayers, the voters know that too. because as Glenn's example shows, you know that when you maintain your own home.
Sure.
And everything that you delay, if you're not going to move out, you're going to have it. It's not going to go
Sooner or
away.
later.
It's not going to go away, and that's sort of where Waterford is too. So, I sort of want to. We're about out of time, but maybe we can get this in. Maybe we could summarize a little bit about time horizons, because that's a big deal. Some of these projects go beyond anybody's one term in the office
Sure.
of First Selectman. So that's why I think the First Selectman has to be very, very responsible about this, but also communicative, so people know why it is that you're putting something where you're putting it.
And to your point, Paul, the reason that's very important is because that provides continuity. So if you have a first selectman leaving office for whatever reason, there's a plan in place. So the next person coming in, there's continuity, so you can follow or continue to follow through on that plan.
Yeah.
The fact that we don't have those plans in place, quite honestly, is somewhat of a disadvantage, not only to the next person coming into the selectman's office, but the Board of Finance and the RTM members, the department heads, and the community, because they don't know what the expectations are. So it's very important to have those plans in place and communicate and follow through.
I couldn't agree more, and I just know that you fully understand this from, as you mentioned earlier, from your professional career, and also from both you and Glenn from your lifetime of observing the town of Waterford. And Glenn's point about on time horizons about agility, I also wanted to kind of revisit that, because, you know, tax bases can change too. I mean, you can get either a big downturn or a big increase, and one way or the other, you have to be able to adjust sensibly. And I can remember when the money was coming in so rapidly from the Millstone plants, and people were almost arguing about how to use the money.
Couldn't spend it fast enough.
Correct. And it wasn't. I'm not saying that they were wasteful. That's not the point. But they were almost. They weren't prepared in a prioritized way to address the capital plans one by one. That's how we ended up, I think, at the end of the day, with all of our school construction being necessary at once.
Sure.
Because we hadn't really addressed things in an orderly way. We put $100 million in the ground in water and sewer pipes. Important to do. It changed the community. But that's why, and when they go wrong, I think people care an awful lot about buildings.
Yeah, and again, that's why it's even more important to have this planning process in place now and stick to it.
Yes.
Because we don't have the benefit of Millstone.
We're not going to have a sudden influx like that again.
No. So it's even more important
That
now.
particular eagle is probably not going to fly again.
Well, that one's gone.
But you know, the other thing can happen too. You know, you can have a big taxpayer either go bankrupt or pull out, and Waterford could have that jeopardy, and that's why again. The charter was amended after the Millstone experience to put a large responsibility for this with the First Selectman, because the people were wise enough to see that we need to be prepared for both the good times and the bad.
And that's actually another topic for another show that Glenn and I want to address somewhere over the next few months, is the economic development issue and how that fits in to the budget issue and the tax issue.
I'm happy to say you want to address it in another show because we're about out of time, but that will be an important topic. But I think that we're hopefully managed to prove that capital improvement and planning is by no means a boring topic, and certainly it's an essential topic for running a good local government. And with that, I want to mention that we'll see you again. As Pete just said, we have an upcoming topic, so we'll be talking more about the Waterford United way to a better town government. Thank you for watching.
Thank you, Paul.
Thank you, Paul.